Hello aspirants, looking at editorials and question bank for 15th November. The first editorial in the Hindu newspaper is Demonetization and After. So this is actually regarding the demonetization program undertaken right now and what are the flaws which would have been taken care of. Like one is the number of 500 and 1000 rupee currencies in circulation is more than 86%. So when such a huge amount of currency is taken out of circulation, which has been unprecedented in Indian history too, because earlier when demonetization was done by the Janata Party government, the higher order currency notes were there with a minor section of the population. So that actually affected only the rich class. But presently what we see, a huge section of the population, almost the entire population has been affected. So that is one aspect which is highlighted. Second aspect is that ATMs have to be recalibrated. So this has not yet been done. The preparation was not done. This was not realized. So this was realized a day later that ATMs will not be able to dispense this new cash currency because of its change in size. So this aspect had to be taken into consideration now, and recalibration of every ATM machine in the country will have to be done. So that is a huge exercise which needs to be undertaken. Even the finance minister has said it will take at least 15 days to recalibrate all ATMs in the country. So this is an exercise on fast track. So this also shows that sufficient planning was lacking. Also, the editorial highlights that it is true that keeping this demonetization as a secret plus preparing for it is a very difficult task. That balancing has to be taken care of, that how much can be revealed and how much can be kept back. So that is also appreciated. Then another aspect is about the currency which is given right now. So the banks are issuing new currency which is only the 2000 rupee note. The 500 rupee note has been introduced today. So why this delay in introduction of 500 rupee notes? What sense does it make to provide 2000 rupee notes to the people? Because this cannot be used. The change cannot be provided by people, they cannot be used as such so easily. So this is another problem which the government has put people into. The editorial says if 500 currency note would have been brought in circulation along with 2000 rupee note, it would have had been much better. Rather, 500 rupee note makes more sense. So that is there, the new 500 rupee note. So that is another aspect highlighted. Then after that it speaks of even another banking correspondents. So these banking correspondents are people who work in the villages as banks. So these are called bank sathis because banks do not have enough penetration in rural areas. So these bank sathis function as banks. They take in money from the people as deposits, and also they issue money to the people as a withdrawal. So they have the entire computerized system, a teller machine with them, a handheld machine through which they can perform all these activities and track can be kept. So all this is there. So this banking correspondents were also given a limit of only 50,000 withdrawals which can be done, cash withdrawals, holdings which they can have. So this cash holding limit has been relaxed now. So that is another aspect appreciated, because the most sufferers are also the poor. So that has to be taken care of. So these are few points highlighted. That is in the editorial, the first part. The second editorial is Hope Floats in Colombia. So this is again regarding Colombia. We have discussed this issue earlier in October. We have also discussed about the peace deal which Colombian government took with a former terrorist organization which has presently given up arms, that is FARC. So this is a terrorist organization in Colombia. Colombia is a country in South America, you can see here. Even the president of Colombia, Juan Manuel Santos, was given the Nobel Peace Prize for this initiative. So this is Colombia in South America, you can see here this white region. So this peace deal which the two struck, the government and this FARC, was put on referendum so that people could vote on it whether they accept the deal or reject the deal. The referendum took place and people rejected the deal. Why did they reject? We'll discuss that too. And even after rejection, few days later, Nobel Peace Prize was announced, and Juan Manuel Santos, for this initiative office of brokering a peace deal with a former terrorist organization, he had been awarded. The negotiations for peace deal went on for 4 years. So it was a protracted exercise. Also, this peace deal did not necessarily be put to referendum. Means the constitution or any law did not mandate that the president or the government should put this to referendum, but to gauge the viewpoints of the people, what the people felt about this, because this is a huge political cost too. If it goes haywire, then the government would also have to face the consequences. The government may fall, be not able to win elections. So getting to know the sentiments of the people was important. So for that purpose, this deal was put to referendum, so that the provisions in the deal are accepted and there is a justification given for them being in place. So this aspect actually backfired. The people rejected the deal. Why did the people reject the deal? The provisions in the deal, the major specific provisions, sticking out points were: one, that it allowed the FARC members to be reintegrated into the society. They had confessed to their criminal offences. Now, FARC was involved in drug trafficking. It had recruited minors within its team. Then it had also conducted huge massacres in the country. And now it was forgiven, given an amnesty. And it was allowed to be part of the mainstream political system too. It was allowed to form its own political party on a Marxist ideology. Then they were allowed to contest the 2018 presidential and legislature elections, which are scheduled in Colombia and which are due. And then finally they were given 10 seats, unelected seats reserved in the parliament for during this time till 2026. So all these benefits which they got were actually disliked by the people who had been persecuted by them, who had suffered on their hands. So this was a major sticking point. The former president of Colombia had rallied on a rejection for the deal. So the referendum actually resulted in a rejection of the deal. So now what is in news is a fresh deal has been finalized, and this may or may not be put to referendum. So that is another aspect. But then the Nobel Peace Prize being given, and this initiative being appreciated internationally now, gives more backing to it. We have to understand that there is a cost involved here, because political cost involved too, and another aspect is also the socio-economic cost involved. So whether we look at the what has happened in the past or we look to the future. So what has happened cannot be changed. Of course, they would be charged at a lower level, means they would not be charged for the criminal offences as they have been confessed, but they would be charged on a lesser scale because of the amnesty provided to the recruits or members of FARC. But then they would be prosecuted as well. So that is not complete amnesty. But plus, we have to see whether these terrorist organizations should be allowed to continue or should they be brought to an end, integrated into the mainstream and taken forward. So that is the aspect. So of course, people have this demand for retribution. That is badla, what we say in Hindi, that they want a vengeance, revenge as such against these members who had committed atrocities. But then that's how things would go ahead. So on that aspect, a little milder tone needs to be taken. Plus the president should also understand the reality of the situation and the way ahead should be found. So FARC has decided that it has given up arms and it no longer has plans to pick up arms again. So if this promise has been given by FARC, how do we deal with them now? So whether do we push them to go back to arms and to their old practices, or should we welcome them and make sure that Colombia, the country, remains in peace in the future, and then economic development, social development can take place too. So that is the issue. Next we look at the question bank. So for today we have picked up 2 questions. Again today the lead article is on Trump, so we do not need to go into that. One question is on again demonetization. So this is a repeat question from 11th November question bank. So this is the same question put up again, and this new article's content has also been integrated into the previous content which we had done on 11th November. So the question was, the government of India recently announced the demonetization of rupees 500 and 1000 notes in circulation. What are the reasons for such a move? Discuss its pros and cons. So this is the same question. The content is also the same. The starting part, reasons for currency demonetization, is taken from the old article on 11th November. Then this cons which are there is also the same. Only what has been added are the pros. So this is an article today which is pro demonetization. The article on 11th November was against demonetization and some questions being raised. So we have integrated both of them. We'll discuss it. So the question we have understood. Now to go ahead, the one aspect is, as we have discussed in the editorial also right now, that there is a huge amount, 85% of the currency which was in rupees 500 and 1000 notes denomination. So out of 16 lakh crore rupees in circulation, about 14 lakh crore was in this denomination. So it's the huge currency which has been demonetized. That is also known. Now reasons for currency demonetization, as we have discussed earlier, this was for targeting black money. So taxmen will have their radar on all those people who have been hoarding black money, not making their complete income tax disclosures. So of course they would come on radar. So that is another check on black money which will take place. Then another aspect is about the counterfeit currency. There is a huge amount of counterfeit currency which is speculated to be in the economy, circulating in the economy. So to put a check on that, another aspect. The third aspect is that this counterfeit currency is also used to fund terrorism in India. So that is called terror funding. Means all these militants who enter into India, they are all paid through this currency. Then through them it gets circulated into the economy. So this is one way in which terrorism is funded by counterfeiting India's currency. So to put a check on this, this has been an initiative taken. So these are the major points. Then the pros of this which have to be discussed is, of course, the reasons for currency demonetization are also the pros, that this will be the initiatives taken. But extending further on it, some elaboration. One aspect which is highlighted in today's article is that it will put a check on drug trafficking and money laundering schemes. So where we say terrorism is funded through counterfeit currencies or through cash currency, even drug trafficking, money laundering schemes are all funded through currencies which are not in the mainstream economy. So this is how money laundering means turning black money into white. So one example of how this is done is also given here. So all illegal activities use cash money, which is the black money. So it's the parallel economy which runs in these illegal activities. But remember that all activities in cash or in the black money market, as it is said, money which is not into the mainstream economic system, which is not into calculation, is not black money. Because even very poor people, they do cash transactions, they do not file their income tax returns. Of course they would not be liable to income tax too, but since they do not, then their money does not come into the mainstream economic system as such in the calculations. That does not mean that they have black money. So that is just unaccounted money as such. So all unaccounted money does not mean that it is illegal. But yes, all illegal activities are funded through this unaccounted money only. So that is there. Now one example, as I said, about money laundering which has been given is that cash was couriered from Paris to Belgium. And then here gold was brought with this money. So the money where it is originating, from there it is taken to another place. There it is used to buy gold. Then from this gold is then transported to Dubai here in this case. In Dubai, this gold is then converted into jewelry. And then this jewelry is sold to India at profits. And the profits are then sent back to France. So that is how money, which was unaccounted money, black money, has been transferred through the globe and has come back to France as white money. Because now what is it shown as? Is that it's shown as profit. So this is how black money flows out from the economy, because when these people from Paris sent it out, it was unaccounted money, means it was not shown in the income tax. But now this is how the whole thing happens. So this is called money laundering, that black money is then used to show white income. So black money is converted into white. Remember that this money laundering is done, that is converting black money into white, is required only if the source of the black money is some illegal activity. means some criminal activity. So if that is the way this money has been generated, then it cannot be shown to the government out in the public as the source. So to convert this black money into white, this whole process is used, and then finally the profits are coming in. Is that how it is shown that this is the source of the money? So this is called money laundering. This is one example given. So this currency demonetization would put a check on drug trafficking and money laundering, because now these cash have become worthless which are there. So now they will not be of any demand in anywhere in the world and country too. So then this drug trafficking and money laundering would come to a halt. Then another aspect which it highlights is the economy will shift from black to white. So all these illegal activities would also come down, plus also people who have money and who have not disclosed their income correctly. So they will also disclose their income correctly and make their black money white. So that is another aspect. The third point highlighted is that there would be so much of money coming into the mainstream economy. So all this money is going through the banks. So even the banks are getting so much of deposits. Plus also it is expected to, and plus it is also that the formal economic system is getting so much of currency into it. So this will result in those amounts also being incorporated into calculation of economic growth. So it is expected that the GDP growth rates may also go into double digits. So that is a positive expectation, optimism shown. So we'll have to wait and watch whether the economists are proved right. So that is another aspect. Then upthrust to banking system, when banks are getting in so much of currency with them now. So they are facing with the problem of NPAs, non-performing assets. So because of that huge loss or burden on their balance sheet, they are not able to provide more loans into the economy, and overall then the economic environment also suffers. Interest rates don't go low, though RBI urges the banks to go ahead and lower interest rates, but they don't, because they are themselves constrained because of NPAs. So now when they're getting so much of currency into the formal economy in terms of deposits, which are also expected in these coming days, so this will result in banks also getting in so much of cash with them. So that will reduce the burden of their NPAs into their balance sheets, and then they will also result hopefully into lowering of the interest rates too. So overall it will be positive for the economy too. Then another is shift to cashless economy. So this will be because now cash has become volatile. It is difficult to keep cash in hand as such. So then people may also prefer, and presently too many are preferring cashless economy, online transactions. So once they get introduced to this, that also gets a boost. So shift to cashless economy is also the objective of the government. So completely it may not be possible, but a boost to it is good, because everything done through transactions online is all out in the open. So there cannot be any concealments there. So this is of course encouraged by the government. Then another is even the government's tax collections would increase when people will disclose their true incomes. So that is also positive. Then another is the inflation rates may slow down, because now currency crunch has come to such a stage that people may not think of raising prices further. So price rise is what is the major feature of inflation. So that would also be checked. So inflation slowdown is also expected. Even an appreciation of the rupee is also on expectations of the economists in India. Then another last point is stock boosts. So people invest in stocks also for companies. So that is also an investment done. So that is also expected to rise, which is again positive for the economy. So these are the positive aspects, the pros of this initiative. The cons, which we have already discussed earlier and we'll see once again, are the short-term contraction in money supply, the trouble which people are facing, but that is short-term initiative. It can be just made a reference to, but that is not a specific con. So this is there. Then second aspect is some cash-intensive sectors like gold, jewelry and real estate would be affected because of this demonetization drive. So this will hurt their growth. The important point actually is that this aspect by itself, that demonetization of the currency, will not put a check on black economy completely, because black economy, this is based on the belief that all the money which people have kept unaccounted for is only in the form of cash. So all the wealth is not in the form of cash. It may be in some other forms too, in some forms of physical assets too, like jewelry, gold as such. So all that is not accounted for. So this demonetization will not affect that at all. So that is one aspect highlighted. Another aspect highlighted is that even property, gold property, the two aspects in which investments are generally made. And another aspect is that how will this affect future tax evasions? Like a person has certain amount of money, unaccounted money right now. He may disclose it and pay the income and the income tax and the penalty too. But then later, when again his business continues, then how much tax does he pay when new money is there in his hand and in the economy? So then later tax evasions will not take place. How can that be guaranteed? So that is question. So this is only a one-time exercise. Then if then later again accumulation of black money would take place. Does that mean that this demonetization drive would again take place? So is such an initiative essential? Is this the way the black money can be tackled in the country? So that is what is highlighted. So what has to be done is, along with this initiative, there are many more measures required to make sure that black money is struck at the source. So some examples are also given, some suggestions are given, that all transactions in gold and real estate business have to be done through checks or through transactions in the mainstream. No cash transactions should be allowed. So keeping some checks on these is very essential to ensure that black money is nipped in the bud rather than being accumulated. So that are the important points. Next question which we look at is on India-Japan nuclear deal. There is again an article based on this. So the question is, discuss the significance of India-Japan nuclear deal. Also discuss the significance of strong Indo-Japan relations from economic and strategic perspective. So now we have discussed the India-Japan nuclear deal in news quite often. The deal has been signed, as you know, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Japan a few days ago. But then this deal has to be ratified even by the Japanese parliament, the Diet, that is expected in early 2017. Only then this deal can be put into effect. So this is one point. Also, the deal was stuck on the nullification clause or the termination clause, which meant that Japan wanted, if India conducts a nuclear test, then the deal should be immediately nullified. But then India insisted that there should not be any immediate nullification. So in the present deal too, a note has been attached which says that if India conducts a nuclear test, then Japan can give 1 year notice period and terminate the deal. So that will give leeway for negotiations. So that is how the deal has been signed. The significance of this deal now. So this deal is significant on two major perspectives. One is that many companies, Western nuclear companies from USA and also from France. Westinghouse is again a company from USA which is planning to set up 6 nuclear reactors in Andhra Pradesh, Kovada. So here again these nuclear reactors cannot be established without approval from Japan, because Westinghouse has also a stake of Westinghouse is with Japanese company Toshiba. So unless and until Japanese nuclear deal is not signed, just the US nuclear deal will not be sufficient for nuclear reactors to be installed in India. Then another aspect is, so this is just one company, even other companies, GE, Areva from France, all these, GE is again from USA, all these have a stake with Japanese companies. So Hitachi, Toshiba, Mitsubishi, these are Japanese companies which are involved in nuclear commerce too. So they have a stake here. So that's why Japanese deal is important. Plus another point is that Japan also provides critical components to various nuclear reactors. So even if the company is not having a Japanese stake, but even if it's setting up a nuclear reactor where the critical component is coming from Japan, then it cannot be set up without India-Japan nuclear deal. So this is important. Only Russian reactors are the ones which are independent of Japanese critical components. All other nuclear reactors which have been proposed in India have to be dependent on critical components from Japan. Also another source for these critical components would be China. So we don't want to depend on China for critical components. So again this deal becomes significant. So these are two major aspects. Also it is significant for Japan because then Japanese nuclear companies would also get trade and commerce. So they can also establish nuclear reactors in India, and this is huge trade. So it's in billions of dollars that this nuclear commerce would take place, and Japanese companies are presently left out of it. So this is the significance. Then looking at India-Japan economic relations and strategic relations too. Economic aspect, there are two major programs, the two major projects in which India has investments from Japan. So one of them is Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, DMIC, which was initiated in 2008, and Japan has invested in this. It has given lower interest rate loans to India too. So these have been there. So this is an industrial corridor, means a freight corridor, means a railway track for freight, means goods being transported would be set up, and adjoining areas would also be established as industrial corridors. So it's a complete Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor under implementation. Then second is in 2015, India-Japan have signed an agreement for bullet train from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. So that is also on the anvil. So these have also been streamlined in the present India-Japan meet also, which took place. That was the annual summit, India-Japan annual summit, for which Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Japan presently. Then Japan has also supported India's membership to NSG. So this is significant. Then also on visa aspects, it is having easing of visa norms for Indian students, and also Japan is training Indians in manufacturing practices. So Japanese manufacturing practices are renowned. So Indians would also be trained in these Japanese manufacturing practices. So that had also been discussed and agreed upon. And also an integration of the policies. It says Act East policy, which is an economic policy too, and Japan's free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. Both are converging now. So economic viewpoints are converging. Countries are coming together economically. Also, Japanese businessmen pointed out about the bottlenecks which they face, which earlier we have discussed. Even Singapore president, when he came to India, discussed. So that is regarding land acquisition and ease of doing business. So that aspect, red tapeism, was highlighted by him too. So even Japanese investors highlight the same things for India. So India needs to work on that. Now looking at India-Japan strategic relations. So what do strategic relations signify? Strategic relations talk about military defense relations, the space-based relations, also related to international dynamics, political dynamics with respect to countries. So these aspects come under strategic relations. So India and Japan's space agencies, ISRO and JAXA respectively, have signed an agreement on outer space presently when Prime Minister visited Japan. So this is of significance. Then even in 2014, after a gap of 50 years, Japan has lifted its ban on arms exports. So there was a complete ban. Now India has also plans to acquire, it has decided to acquire US-2 amphibious aircrafts from Japan. So this 12 aircrafts will be brought by India. So this is important. Then also another aspect is about assembling of planes. So assembling of 10 planes in India would be done, which have been acquired from Japan. So this is under the Make in India initiative that the government of India wants economy and job growth to take place in India. So Make in India, manufacturing taking place in India. So this is also technology transfer on military technology would also take place along with it. So this is of significance. Then another aspect is about the Chabahar port, which India is developing in Iran. So Japan has also shown interest and is planning to invest here. So this will be also of significance for India, because Chabahar port is also set to be countering even the Gwadar port, where China is investing in Pakistan, and Chabahar port where India is investing in Iran. So if Japanese assistance is provided, that would be of great value. Then another is about the Malabar exercise. So this Malabar exercise takes place in the Bay of Bengal, in the periphery of the South China Sea. So this is an exercise of 3 countries. It's basically India and USA, but Japan has also been invited. Also more countries like Australia, New Zealand have also been invited in these exercises earlier, and China raises its concern every time. So this is because it says that this is China's neighborhood. Well, all superpowers and regional powers are coming together and conducting exercises. It's a threat to China. So they're trying to threaten China. So that is what China takes as a stand. But this is how India is also coming together and taking positions. plus also the South China Sea dispute. So Japan also, along with India, upholds right to freedom of navigation under UN clause, United Nations Conventions on Law of the Sea. So India-Japan closer ties are also important to counter China. So these are the strategic significant points. So that is it for today. Thank you.